And you know, there's an international flair to this group, and I was just telling you know, some of the folks that were milling in that I was greeting that I'm half Dutch. My mom was born in Rotterdam, raised in Amsterdam. We still have family that lives throughout Europe. We've got got an uncle that lives on the Mediterranean, south of France, The Hague. I've got family that lives in Switzerland and all throughout Holland. So it's pretty cool to have that. And when I was in high school and middle school, it's kind of embarrassing to be half Dutch, you know, and now I embrace it. I think it's so awesome, you know, to have my, you know, my opa and my oma, and I love going over there and visiting family and friends. My kids get a huge kick out of it, especially with the time change, because they're eating candy at all hours, and it's they love Holland. It's a candy fest for those guys. Well, looking at the outline, guys, I mean, I'm not going to try to teach too much, you know, specifics about real estate law, but I did want to talk to you about some ethical considerations. And no matter what you do, I always say take the high road. You know, it may be harder. It may be, you know, less profitable, but it's a sustainable business model when you always look at your business through the lens of ethics. I mean, I do not want to see people in the shortcut or the short term gain some money, but they sacrifice their reputation, their resources, you know, and in some cases their livelihoods. And you know, I'm dealing with, you know, hundreds of transactions, especially in the short sale arena. Where, you know, the seller is in a distressed situation, the purchase price is not enough to cover the expenses. There's a lot of moving parts, and people, you know, try, you know, to figure out, okay, how can we make the deal work? In the moment, in the quest to get these deals done, they're willing to, you know, kind of push aside the ethical lens, so to speak, or what they try to do is say, well, really, it's just one deal, and it's going to be okay. And the deal that comes to mind, you know, is one where there's a short sale where it's a back-to-back transaction, okay? So you've got what's known as a flop. It used to be flipping, and now with short sales, it's flopping. So that's the new word, is flopping. Does everybody want to say it? Say flopping.
Flopping.
Yeah, so work with me now. So in this case, you know, an investor, you know, could be anybody, they buy low in the morning, and then in the afternoon they sell high, and they make money, you know, they profit. And there's nothing wrong with that per se, as long as, you know, everything is fully disclosed. Where it gets gray and where I try to, you know, help illuminate things for people is where, you know, they try to conceal something from the short sale lender, where the short sale lender who is taking a significant loss is not aware that there is a second transaction. They do not know that, okay, the house is being sold at a, you know, $100,000 loss to them. An hour later, their buyer is now selling for a $50,000 gain. Okay, so you got a sale, and then you got another sale. They're back to back. Sometimes there can be a few days apart, but typically it's a back-to-back transaction, one right after the next. And, you know, my position is in those is that you got to have full disclosure. Let the short sale lender know. In this particular case, I get a call from a broker who's concerned about a deal, you know, which is a flop, and she says, "Steve, can you please take a look at it?" And I did, and I talked to all the parties, and ultimately I got to the attorney that was orchestrating it, not in a bad way. This is just his livelihood. It's what he does, and he has a different opinion as to the ethics involved in those kind of things. But basically, you know, his argument is that it's ideology, okay? You know, you can buy low, you can sell high. It has nothing to do with the short sale lender. They've agreed to their price. But the problem is that I don't think that's the case. In the first purchase and sale contract, they had put in there in the special stipulation that the buyer intends to sell at a profit, which is enough to make the short sale lender be on inquiry notice where they have to ask. Now, the investor was okay with divulging that information if the short sale lender requested it. I personally said it's not enough, because what if they overlook it? What if there's a problem? Is the title company willing to insure over it? Yes, investor. You know, yes, Mr. Seller. You make your money, you're gone. But what happens if the short sale lender says, "Wait a minute, in our short sale agreement, we reserve the right to undo this short sale because we deem there to be fraud, that there truly wasn't an arm's length transaction, that we did not know that there was a second transaction." And illegal flops have two elements typically. One is concealment, where the short sale lender didn't know, and the other one is where there's a manipulation of the BPO. How do we know that the initial person did manipulate the BPO? A BPO is a broker price opinion, and that's what the short sale lender relies on when they set, the amount that they're going to receive on the closing statement. So there's all kind of websites out there that teach people how to manipulate the BPO. So if you got the concealment, we're just hoping that there's no manipulation of the BPO, or even if there's no manipulation of the BPO, there's a concealment element that might rise to the level where that short sale lender will say, you know what, guys, we deem this as fraudulent, and this is what could occur. These are the risks that are involved, when taking a chance. Number one, there can be a reversal of that short sale. There can be a reimposition of the security deed, and there can be a foreclosure. Can you imagine the mess that would occur? I'm not saying it's likely to happen. I'm not saying it's going to happen every time. But are you willing to take the risk that that short sale lender is going to wake up and say, wait a minute, I deem this as fraudulent. I'm going to reimpose that security instrument. It's called a clawback provision, and I'm going to foreclose. You've got a buyer, you've got a title company, you've got a lender, you've got realtors. Everybody's in the crosshairs. And in this particular case, in my story, the selling agent and the buyer, they were all well aware of how this deal was going to go down. So they're not innocent either. And from the realtor standpoint, E&O is not going to protect them. It's an intentional act. From the broker standpoint, it's an intentional act. There's no E&O. You're a defendant, possibly. Even if you win, you've lost. It's going to cost you $20,000+ to defend your name.
What's the time period? How long could they do it a year later?
Well, fraud, the statute of limitations is...
No, not on fraud. Fraud clearly is, if there's collusion to defraud, then that's not what let's assume there's not, but they don't know that there's another buyer. Can the lender come back a year later and say, we're reversing it?
Well, yeah. In the short sale agreement, it's a contract. Statute of limitations, I believe, is 6 years. Fraud is 4 years from discovery. So it's a long time. And so you want to make sure, you get it done right. So do I think this other attorney is necessarily wrong, who argued exclusively ideology with me? It's the American way. It's none of their business, although he is a title agent and he's issuing title insurance. And, so what I said to him is, I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to create a special stipulation in this offer, and I actually put it in your material so you can see that, which basically says that the deal is okay as long as we get in writing from the title company that they're willing to defend our buyer in the event that there's a reimposition of the security deed, because there's not full disclosure of the second deal. Now, what do I mean by full disclosure? Full disclosure means, hey, short sale lender, here's a copy of the contract. All right? We want you to take a look at it. All the terms, it's transparent. It's the light of day. Yes, there's going to be money made. You may like it, you may not like it. There's an inference of fraud when there is a difference between, the first deal and the second deal. Sometimes it could be sweat equity. Other times it could be, hey, they just negotiated a great deal. It could be that the buyer's willing to overpay for whatever reason, but they want to take a closer look at it. The bigger the spread, the greater the likelihood there's going to be fraud. So the title companies who have really taken a bath right now want to take a closer look at these deals to make sure that there's no problem. Again, we don't want to recreate the same issues that we've had over and over again, where in the flipping world, there was a manipulation of appraisals, there was a lot of bad guys involved, a lot of people went to jail, but look at the issues that came about. Now, I'm not saying exclusively, but it definitely played a hand in the problems that we have today. So I just think that, ethics is the way to go. Another thing, yes, go ahead.
I just had a question for you. What has been your experience when you do disclose that information to that lender?
Yeah. Well, I've had two experiences very different. One was okay. There was about a $15,000 gain between the first and the second deal. Short sale lender was okay with that. It's a great question. I had another one which involved lake property, and the first deal was $950,000. It's my buy, and the second deal was $1,700,000.